Hello, heretics. This is Lilith, and welcome to the dark side of paradise. As promised, I'm here to continue the story of my indoctrination. I'm hoping to help as many people as possible understand the thinking behind evangelical Christianity. As promised, today's topic is authority, and I found this a much harder topic than I initially expected. Partly because it's hard to remember the narrative. You remember the strange things you believed, but trying to trace back to why can be difficult, especially when it happened so early. The thing about authority is that to Christians, it's not the same as what anyone else might mean by authority. By authority, you might mean appealing to an authority as an expert, not infallible, but certainly more knowledgeable than the average person. Or you might see authority in a military sense, where an individual is given authority over a group of people so that they can more effectively do whatever it is they need to do. Christian authority is closer to the latter, but it's more than that. Much more than that. You see, their authority isn't just the authority that we give. It's basically magic. I'm going to explain that. But first, I want to speak in defense of my parents. My parents are wonderful people. Though they started in a far more extreme evangelical portion of Christianity, they moved away from that. They did. And I see them as victims because they were taught quite explicitly that if they didn't teach their children certain things and do certain things, their children would go to hell, or very probably go to hell and be tortured, and they didn't want that. They are kind people. They've been there for me when I needed them. They've moved on to far healthier understandings of faith. But I was their first child, and unfortunately that means that during my most impressionable years, they were associated with the weirdest forms of Christianity. I don't blame them. I understand they were trying their best to do what was right, and they got better over time. Not everybody can say the same. Many of the weird and wacky things that I learned, they didn't necessarily teach me explicitly, but this is one that they did. And I really wish they hadn't. Authority in a Christian worldview is not optional. It's something almost by divine right. And yes, I mean like the divine right of kings. The right, or recht, to authority is top down. You see, when I mentioned about how our sin, or the sin of Adam and Eve rather, broke the universe, literally, what that means is that the earth, and by extension the physical universe, for some reason, was put under the authority of Adam. Adam was the ruler, in a sense, below God, but having had it given to him as an inheritance, shall we say. And this wasn't just a term, it's a literal, spiritual, intertwined reality in the minds of believers. That's why his sin broke everything. Because everything under his authority was then affected. You see the same thing and beliefs of the same thing in Christian churches, where a pastor has authority over their congregation, but then the elders may have authority over the pastor, or not, depending on the internal structure of that church. Deacons have authority over their individual areas. The man has authority over the woman has authority over the children. Everything is about a hierarchical structure of authority. And it isn't optional. It's woven into the very foundations of reality. It's one of the reasons Christians don't understand that miracles are just magic. They don't see it that way. Because when Jesus commanded the storm to cease, or the demons to leave, or the blind to see, he was imposing his will on nature, and nature responded because it recognized him as an authority over it. As if inanimate matter was conscious of who Jesus was and responded appropriately. This is going to sound very, very strange, and I do understand why. But it's important to realize that this understanding of authority underpins everything in Christianity, in evangelical Christianity especially, and in apologetics, which you will hear lots about. Of course, my parents taught me that elders had authority over me, that teachers had authority over me. I took this to mean that I must listen to them, and I must learn from them. It didn't allow me to question. Now, I'm sure the more perceptive among you can already imagine the types of abuse this would leave children open to. Fortunately for me, my parents also saw that. So they told me that I must always tell them everything. In order to protect me from the abuse that the authoritative system naturally set me up for, they kind of turned me into a tattletale, someone who had to always be able to tell them everything. I ended up sacrificing a lot of internal privacy, and I understand now why they were so adamant about that. It wasn't that they wanted to violate my privacy, it was that they wanted to protect me from the problems even they could see in the system that they thought they had to indoctrinate me into. Hopefully what you've noticed from this and my previous video is that the first thing the church does is teach you not to trust yourself. This is directly from Scripture. The heart is deceitful beyond things. All our righteousness is as filthy rags. There is not one worthy, no, not even one. So you're taught not to trust yourself, first and foremost. You have to trust those in authority over you. But they are also fallible, and they could be wrong. So where does that leave you? I'm sure many people who have argued with Christians online have heard the no true Christian fallacy. Catholics aren't real Christians. They aren't real Christians. Someone else isn't a real Christian. A real Christian would never do this, say that, whatever. It's endless. That isn't something that the believer is pulling out of their ass in the moment, though. I was taught as a very young child that there were many churches that were not truly Christian. Maybe some of the individuals were sincere and God knew their hearts, but the Catholic Church wasn't really Christian, the church itself. There were also more traditional churches that were written off as dead churches, not spirit-filled, because they didn't have the same exuberance as more evangelical and charismatic churches. There were churches that had wrong doctrine, because of course it differed from our doctrine. And the differences might be slight, and so they were probably still saved, because, you know, there's a little wiggle room, but, well, it's hard to tell. And that's the thing. You're told not to trust yourself, that you're going to build your life on the solid bedrock of Christ our King. But it's shifting sand. The theology itself undercuts itself so many different ways that you're left always unsure, skating here and there, trying to figure out what a true Christian would do and who are the true Christians, not to put yourself under the authority of a not true Christian. You're always on your back foot. I don't know any better way to describe it than that. The problem is that slowly the circle is drawn tighter around you until you have no escape. You have to throw yourself into the scriptures, or more likely into whatever interpretation of the scriptures is closest to you at that time and makes sense in your indoctrinated state. This is a terrible method of control, and terribly effective. Like everything else about indoctrination, it undercuts the integrity of the self to replace it with dogma. And there are so many slippery facets to keep you from ever being secure. I don't know if I'll ever find them all, but I'm damn well going to try. Thank you for listening, and I hope that this has been helpful. Please leave any questions in the comments below, and I will try to answer as many as I can. Hopefully next time we'll be able to get on to the fun stuff, like demons. Yes, real ones. No, I'm not kidding. But, hey, there could be a lot of fun involved. Thank you for your time, and until next time, this is Lilith Liberated. I've escaped Eden, and I hope you will too. Thank you.